one, we're going to take a little bit of a break from talking about writing necessarily, and we're going to take a step back and we're just going to talk about grammar. And please feel free to groan loudly, because I get it. But we're going to do it quicker than they might have done for you in grammar school. But if you don't remember this stuff, hopefully it'll be a really good refresher. If you are in the classroom right now with a substitute teacher for me, this is the point where the substitute is going to hand out a worksheet. And you're going to have to look at the sentences and figure out what part of speech the designated word is from the 8 in the directions. It's not graded yet. It's not a quiz. If you don't know the answer, leave it blank. So if you're in the classroom right now, hit pause, come back to me in a minute, and work on that activity. You may very well complain out loud, because if you don't remember stuff, that's okay. So just fill out as much of those answers as you possibly can. If you're watching me from home, you might have already done this activity in the classroom. If you haven't, the activity should be posted somewhere in your resources on iTunes University with the rest of this course. So now would be a good time to do that activity, and it'll make more sense in a few minutes. So put me on pause so that you can do that. If you've come back, that means you've already done that activity, hopefully. So let's go over the 8 parts of speech. And I'm going to do them from easiest to most complex, or easiest and ones that confuse people the most. And it's not going to take us very long to do it, because grammar is important, but what I don't like is when English teachers don't show you the connection between grammar and writing. So there was one course I was going to teach. This course actually was going to be 6 weeks of grammar. Because you can know all the grammar in the world and you can find subjunctive clauses and things like that, but if you can't string sentences together, that's still a big problem. So there are 8 parts of speech. They are listed in the directions of that exercise. We're going to do them a little out of order than how they're listed, but make sure that you take notes on this, and we're going to do examples for you too. So the first thing we're going to start with is the old-fashioned noun. So the book definition, and this is usually the one everybody remembers, but a noun is a person, place, thing. If you stopped there, you're missing something. You're missing idea. This is usually the element that students miss when they're talking about nouns. And this is why sometimes if you're looking at a sentence, you can't figure out what part of speech something is, because it's the idea part of it. So, there are 2 kinds of nouns. There are common nouns, and there are proper nouns. I know, we're going like old school, grade school kind of thing on you here. We're going to do proper nouns first. Proper nouns, do you remember what they are? Are you talking about it since I'm not with you and I can't hear you? Take a guess. We'll see if you're right. If you're wrong, no big deal. I'm going to tell you the answer anyway. A proper noun is the specific name for something. So, the proper noun for me is Mrs. McDonald. The proper name for our school is Fortis Institute. It's the specific name. So proper nouns are the things that are going to get capitalized, is probably what you remember. So specific names for things. So your specific name is a proper noun for you. Trying to think of another example that's in this vicinity that you can see. This marker that I'm holding, let's use this one instead. The proper name for this, if you can see it, is Expo, because that's the brand of marker. So that's the proper name for this, is an Expo marker. So on the flip side of that, a common noun is any noun that's not proper. So what are some common nouns to describe me? Start shooting them out. Common nouns to talk about me. Girl, woman, teacher, daughter, wife. What else? Since I can't hear you, this makes it a little difficult. But any other noun to label me that's not my name is going to be a common noun. So anything that's a person, place, thing, or idea is a noun. So the next thing we're going to do is a pronoun. Pronouns are not the same things as nouns. Sometimes a lot of students think that they're the same thing, but they're not. Pronouns are actually a part of speech all on their own. And they have the word noun in here because these are related. It's like an uncle or something. What pronouns do, if you haven't already said it together, is they take the place of a noun. So, let's say I'm talking about myself, and I'm going to say, I'm sorry, my name is changing. It's weird to get used to. Mrs. McDonald is walking over to the desk, and the teacher is going to walk back over to the dry erase board, and the teacher is going to shake hands with the skeleton, and the teacher, the teacher, the teacher, the teacher. You get really sick of saying the teacher, the woman, the girl, Mrs. McDonald, all of that stuff over and over again. So instead, you use other words. Like what? Start saying them. Hopefully I'm writing them in the order you're saying them. Go ahead, keep talking. Are you still saying them? Am I writing them right for you? I might be missing some that you said because I can't hear you. But these are examples of pronouns. Him, he, it, you, they, them, us, I, we, she, her, it, hers, mine. Anything that you could use to take the place of the teacher, the girl, the girl, the girl, the girl, the girl in every sentence is a pronoun. It does the same job in a sentence, whether it's the subject of a sentence or something like that. But it just helps that redundancy of saying the same noun over and over and over again, and it helps the flow of a sentence. So the next one we're going to do is an interjection. Do we know what those are? By any chance? I'm going to give you an example. Ow! That's an interjection. It really didn't hurt that much, I swear. The cool thing about an interjection is they're really easy to find because they're typically followed by an exclamation point. Typically, they come at the beginning of a sentence because an interjection is a spontaneous word, we'll call it. So, if you get robbed, God forbid, if you're standing there, your purse is on your shoulder, or if there's a man watching this or in the room, if your wallet is in your back pocket, and someone comes by and grabs it and runs, and you go, "Hey, that's my stuff!" You just said, that was what I just yelled. Hey, that's my stuff. So the interjection in the sentence is the first thing that you immediately yelled. So if you get stung by a bee, you're going to yell, "Ouch! Stupid bee!" The ouch is the interjection. The thing that falls out of your face before you really think about it. The exclamatory word, sometimes it's called. That's why it's followed by an exclamation point. So the interjections are a little bit easier. In professional writing, we don't use interjections because it's not a conversation that's happening. In professional writing, you've already planned out what you're saying ahead of time, so there is no kind of a thing. Interjections are used a lot in script writing, or where there's dialogue, or creative writing, fiction writing, stuff like that, where you're actually having a dialogue between two characters or two people in a play or something like that. But we're not going to use these in our class because we're not doing those kinds of things. So the fourth one, you're halfway there already. The fourth one is a conjunction. Sing the song, conjunction, junction, what's your function? Everyone remembers that song with that from Schoolhouse Rock. You could laugh at my singing abilities, I was not trying. So, conjunctions. If you remember from Schoolhouse Rock, it talked about conjunction, junction. There were two trains, and the trains would hook up. Not like that, but they would hook up. So, what do conjunctions do? Hopefully, you just said they link things, or something like that. So conjunctions link things in a sentence, whether it's two subjects, Mary and I went to the store, two subjects, whether it's two verbs, I punched and kicked my little brother, two verbs, punched and kicked. Whether it's two direct objects, I ate cookies and pancakes for dinner, cookies, pancakes. It's linking. Sometimes it can link two sentences together completely. I went to the store and I spent too much money. Things like that. The cool things about conjunctions is that it's a set of 5 words. So if you see one of those 5 words, it's a conjunction. And usually you guys get the first 3 pretty quickly. And, or, and but are the first 3 kinds of conjunctions. It's usually the other 2 that I end up having to play hangman about. So, if the substitute knows what those, if you're in class, if the substitute knows what the last 2 words are, feel free to put me on pause and play hangman. If you're at home watching this and you really don't feel like playing hangman, here they go. The other 2 are nor and yet. And the reason I have little dotted lines between these is because yet is kind of a fancy way to say but. And nor you use when you're trying to compare things but it's negative. So I want a bracelet or earrings. I don't want a bracelet nor earrings. So when you're trying to use the word nor but in a negative way, that's when nor comes in. It's a little weird. Not a lot of people use it very often, but those are your 5 conjunctions. So if you see those, they're always going to be conjunctions. They can't be anything else. They don't serve any other purpose in a sentence other than to link things together. If you haven't finished writing, put me on pause because I'm about to erase. But look at this, you're halfway there already. You're almost done. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Maybe there's 7 parts of speech, not 8. 7, sorry. I didn't say I was perfect. So let's do this one. After we do this one, I'm going to erase the board again because I want to do the last 2 together. prepositions are really weird to define. They serve a really, really necessary purpose. You know what these are, you use them all the time, but labeling them is just probably something you might not have thought of before. So my definition for prepositions are they are phrase starters in a sentence. And I know that sounds weird. So the thing with prepositions and the thing with the phrases that they start is that you need these things in a sentence to sometimes help the reader know when something happened, where something happened, the people involved, stuff like that. But a preposition is just one word. The stuff that comes after that is called a prepositional phrase, and you might remember that from grammar stuff back in grade school or something like that. The crappy part about prepositions is that you need to kind of memorize them. There is a chart in the back of your book, if you're using the Steps to Writing Well book, that can give you a list of prepositions. If you're at home and you're on your computer, or if you happen to have laptops in front of you, you can Google prepositions and it will give you a list. But the thing is, with prepositions, it's not like conjunctions where I can give you a set of 5. There are about 20 or 30 prepositions. Here's the other crappy thing. Sometimes some prepositions can also work as another part of speech. And I'm not saying that to confuse you, but just to let you know. So here are some examples of prepositions. In, on, above, through, of, off, over, beyond, under, to, and that's one of those words that could work as something else, but we're not going to get into that because you don't really need to know. In, on, above, through, under. There's a ton more in your book that I can't think of at the moment. But when you start a phrase off with these words, it tells you things that you need to know. Oh, after is another one. So is before. So, I was hiding in the treehouse. If I just stop the sentence before the preposition and I say I was hiding, well, that's still a sentence and that's fine. But by adding in the treehouse, it helps the reader or the listener know exactly where I was. So here's another one. After Mom and I baked cookies, I ate them all even though they were too hot. So, when did I eat all the cookies even though they were way too hot? After Mom and I baked them. So that was telling me when something was happening. So you need these and you use these all the time. So a prepositional phrase, and I'm not doing this to try and confuse you, but you might have heard the words prepositional phrase getting thrown around. All a prepositional phrase is a preposition plus all the words in between until you get to a noun. So preposition to the nearest noun, that's your prepositional phrase. So in the treehouse was the first example. In, so the word the is in between. And treehouse is not a person, it's not a place, it's not an idea, but it's a thing, so it's a noun. So in the treehouse, here's your preposition, here's your nearest noun, there's your phrase. The thing is that if you're looking at sentences, which you're going to do again in a minute, but if you're looking at sentences and trying to figure out what parts of speech are what, these are the easiest things to look for first once you know what prepositions are. Because as soon as you find a preposition and you find the noun after it, you automatically know none of those words could be the subject of your sentence, for instance. or none of those words can be the verb. Oh, that's the one I missed. So there are 8. Sorry. So sometimes when you're trying to figure out parts of speech in a sentence, it's the easiest to rule out what you do know and leave what's left. So, okay, I sort of lied. I forgot verb. Sorry. We're going to do verb over here. I would have done this before preposition if I remembered it. Can you tell I don't have notes in front of me? Don't hold it against me. I'm still smart, I swear. Verbs. Usually, we know what these are. They are, right, action words. That's usually what everybody says. Hopefully you said that. The thing with verbs is that students usually miss the other kind of verbs. So the other kind of verb is called a linking or a to be verb. Sometimes they're called different things. So action verbs, there's action verbs, linking verbs. Action verbs actually show somebody doing something. Kick, swim, punch, yell, sing. Those are all actions. But then you get a group of words that you know it's a verb, but it's not an action. It's like a state of being, sort of. Like, I am in the front of the room. Somebody stand up and am. You can't. But I am in the front of the room. So am, A-M, is one of those linking verbs. It's a state of being. It tells you what I am, where I am, something like that. Another one. She is standing at the front of the room. Somebody stand up if you're in a classroom. And please, is for me. Good luck with that, because you're not going to be able to. You just, is. So the other ones, you probably get the hang of this by now. Is, are, was, were, be. Being. He was being a jerk. Been. You guys are probably thinking of has, have, and had. Has, have, had, yeah. Those aren't actually words or verbs. They just help the verbs. That's why I don't have them listed up there. The actual verb is be, being, or been. So that's the skinny on verbs. Now I'm going to erase everything and we're going to do the last two. And I like doing the last two together. So if you didn't finish writing that stuff down, I hope you put me on pause. I like doing these last two parts of speech together. Because they're typically the ones that students mess up the most. But the thing is that they actually kind of do the same thing. That's why I like doing them together. So the ones that we have left are adjectives and adverbs. So, both of them do the same thing. What's their job? What do they do? Are you answering me? I hope so. Hopefully you said that they describe things. Because that's exactly what they do. These two parts of speech do the same exact job. They just do it for different people. And that's usually where people get messed up. And they usually hate adverbs the most. I don't blame them necessarily. So, adjectives. The things that adjectives describe are nouns and pronouns. So, adverbs. This is where we usually get a little stuck. Adverbs describe the parts of speech that are left to an extent. They describe three things. So adverbs describe verbs, adjectives, and here's the weird one, adverbs can describe other adverbs. Which sounds really weird, but I swear they do. The thing about adjectives, and in this case, describe also means modify. In English, a lot of the times people say, what word does that modify? That's what they're talking about. What word does it describe? So adjectives answer a question. So if you read a sentence and you're trying to figure out what part of speech an adjective is, if you say the adjective and then say what, you'll know, or you say the noun or the pronoun, and then say what, you'll know that it's an adjective. So here's what I mean. So the black pony was pretty. It would be a good idea to jot this stuff down too. So, the noun in the sentence, the person, place, or thing in the sentence is the, good, the pony. I hope you said that. So, we have a pony. What kind of pony do we have? A black pony. So typically when you have adjectives, they come before the noun or the pronoun in English. And that's where a lot of people, if they're native Spanish speakers, or if you're English trying to flip to Spanish, it gets a little messed up because the adjective placement is different. But for us, in English, adjectives go before the noun or the pronoun. So adverbs. Adverbs answer a different question because they modify different things. So, adverbs are going to answer the question how, when, where. Usually, not always, but a lot of the times, adverbs end in ly. That's kind of a little trick to find them. Another one is the word very is always going to be an adverb also. And that's one that doesn't end in ly, so it gets a little tricky. So, I ran home quickly. The verb in the sentence, what's the action? Good, ran. How did you run home? Quickly. So quickly is your adverb. Notice it also ends in an ly. So this is modifying that, even though it's a word away. And that's the weird thing about adverbs, is adverbs can go anywhere in a sentence. They can go before a verb, an adjective, or an adverb, or they can go after them. So adverbs are a bit of a toss-up. So let me give you an example of how an adverb can describe another adverb. I'll kind of just give you an overall sentence that we'll dissect together. I hope this being on 2 lines doesn't mess you up. Okay, so this sentence has almost every single part of speech in it. So the very fragile vase with grandma's ashes fell on the floor. So let's start with nouns. So persons, places, or things in here. We have 2 of them. Hopefully you found them. Here's one. Here's the other. So now let's look for the verb or verbs in the sentence. So in this case, there's an action happening. say it if you know it, because I can't hear you. Fell is going to be your verb. The vase fell. So we have main parts on here. So now let's look. Oh, I lied. There are 3 nouns. Sorry if you caught that before I just did. Good job. Now let's look for prepositions. So if you look over your list of prepositions, there are 2 in this sentence, and I swear this time. So here's one, and here's another one. Now, one thing I haven't told you yet is that there are 2 types of adjectives. And you don't necessarily need to know their specific names, but I'll give them to you anyway. There's a category of adjectives called articles, and then there's another category called demonstrative adjectives. If you never remember those terms again, that's fine, doesn't matter. But articles are the, an, and a. So anytime you see the, an, or a, they are always going to be adjectives. So demonstrative adjectives are this, that, these, and those. So anytime you see any of these 4 words, they're always going to be adjectives. So in telling you that, there are 2 articles or adjectives in this sentence. So let's find those first. Notice how we're starting with some of the easier words and ruling them out before we get to the adjectives and adverbs. So the is an adjective because it's an article, and the is an adjective. And the usual trend to do this is to write the part of speech above the word like I'm doing. So we're left with very fragile grammas. So let's start with grammas. We know what that is? Grammas is an adjective because if we say ashes, whose ashes? Grandma's ashes. Because this is a noun and this word is describing the noun, it has to be an adjective. So we're left with very fragile. So here's a noun, and we're going to do that same technique. The vase. What kind of vase? A fragile vase. So since this word is describing a noun and answers the question what, it's an adjective. How fragile was it? Very fragile. So this word is an adverb answering the question how. How fragile was it? Very fragile. So that's how you can have an adverb describing an adjective, which is a little bit weird to conceptualize. So if you're in the classroom, here's what you're doing next. You're taking out that worksheet again, and if you're at home, you can do this too. You're taking out that worksheet again, and you're using your notes, and given the stuff that we just talked about, try that worksheet again, and see how much you know and how well you do this time around. And then if you're in the classroom with a substitute, he or she is going to go over the answers with you, and I'm sure you did a whole lot better than you did last time. And the fact that you're here and you did it and you're in the classroom, I'm going to count that as a journal grade for you. So, not too painful, right? Not too bad? I hope not.